So I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker today, Benjamin Wilson, who is a licensed therapist. I think that's correct. And he is going to be doing a presentation on our stress response and how that pertains to social media. And yeah, so I will turn it over to Benjamin.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's Trent too, right? Just want to make sure I get that right.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Yeah. This work is based on a professor at Stanford named Robert Sapolsky. He's kind of a personal hero of mine, and I discovered him just happenstance online one day and just fell in love with him. And it just so happens that his work coincides obviously with my field, and that's marriage and family therapy, especially his work on the stress response. I kind of became a passion of mine because so many of my clients' problems, issues were really stemming from more or less stressors, not only just with social media, but just from acute anxiety, depression, medical issues that were stress-induced that then cause more stressors. And it kind of feels overwhelming sometimes as a therapist when we don't feel like we know what's going on with our clients. We just know there's stress. So I started to dive into Dr. Sapolsky's work more. You could spend hours online and probably years looking at his research. But I do have, if you want to move to the next slide, Trent, a quick video on Dr. Sapolsky and his work, and we'll just watch it. It's about 5 minutes, and then we'll go from there.
Or could you hear it?
I can't hear it.
I can't hear it.
Let me try that one more time.
It's all good.
I think I didn't enable the sound. Yeah. There we go. Should be good to go now.
If you're a normal mammal, what stress is about is 3 minutes of screaming terror on the savannah, after which it's either over with or you're over with.
Over the last 3 decades, Stanford University neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky has been advancing our understanding of stress, how it impacts our bodies, and how our social standing can make us more or less susceptible.
Is the aggregate bad news and
most of the time, you can find him teaching and researching in the high-achieving, high-stressed world of brain science.
This paper is this huge contrast between classical.
But that's only part of his story. For a few weeks every year or so, Sapolsky shifts his lab to a place more than 9,000 miles away, on the plains of the Masai Mara Reserve in Kenya, East Africa.
You live in a place like this, you're a baboon, and you only have to spend about 3 hours a day getting your calories. And if you only have to work 3 hours a day, you got 9 hours of free time every day to devote to making somebody else just miserable. They're not being stressed by lions chasing them all the time. They're being stressed by each other. They're being stressed by social and psychological tumult invented by their own species. They're a perfect model for westernized stress-related disease. Because what stress is about is somebody is very intent on eating you, or you are very intent on eating somebody, and there's an immediate crisis going on.
When you run for your life, basics are all that matter. Lungs work overtime to pump mammoth quantities of oxygen into the bloodstream. The heart races to pump that oxygen throughout the body, so muscles respond instantly.
You need your blood pressure up to deliver that energy. You need to turn off anything that's not essential. Growth, reproduction, you know, you're running for your life. This is no time to ovulate. Tissue repair, all that sort of thing. Do it later if there is a later.
When the zebra escapes, its stress response shuts down. But human beings can't seem to find their off switch.
We turn on the exact same stress response for purely psychological states, thinking about the ozone layer, the taxes coming up, mortality, 30-year mortgages. We turn on the same stress response, and the key difference there is we're not doing it for a real physiological reason, and we're doing it nonstop. After a while, the stress response is more damaging than the stressor itself, because the stressor is some psychological nonsense that you're falling for. No zebra on Earth running for its life would understand why fear of speaking in public would cause you to secrete the same hormones that it's doing at that point to save its life. I'm studying stress for 30 years now, and I even tell people how they should live differently. So presumably I should have incorporated all of this, and the reality is, like, I'm unbelievably stressed and type A and poorly coping, and like, why else would I study this stuff 80 hours a week? No doubt everything I advise is going to lose all its credibility if I keel over dead from a heart attack in my early 50s. Nah, I'm not good at dealing with stress. You know, one thing that works to my advantage is I love my work and I love every aspect of it, so that's good. But nonetheless, this is pretty clearly a different place than the savannah in East Africa. You know, you can do science here that's very different and more interesting in some ways. You can have hot showers on a more regular basis. It's a more interesting, varied world in lots of ways, but you know, there's a lot out there that you sure miss.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Wonderful. So as you see, Dr. Sapolsky's dedicated his life to figuring out, you know, what's going on with this. And so, you know, one thing I would ask, and it can be rhetorical, or we can just ask, right, is what is one experience when you are relaxed, right? And for everybody, it's different. Everybody experiences being relaxed in different ways, but we do know that when you're relaxed, maybe your heart rate's at a good pace. You're not sweating. Your breathing is constant. You know, you make better eye contact. There's all these different ways of what we feel when we're relaxed. Maybe we feel warmer. Maybe we feel centered. But this plays into the term homeostasis, right? The tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements, especially as maintained by a physiological process, right? Your blood sugar is at a good place. Your heart rate, like I said, is at a good place. You're not profusely sweating. You're not feeling like you're going to get attacked. And so homeostasis is just where we are when we're functioning at our best. I would almost even want to invite anybody to talk about what they experience when they're relaxed. Since we have a limited group today, if one person could share it, that would be actually pretty helpful.
Morgan, I feel like this is a good one you could answer. Well, he may have just stepped out.
That's okay. And we can go to the next slide, Trent. So it's no biggie. Yeah. So what do we experience like during a stressful situation? And this can come from, as humans anyways, a myriad of factors. We do know that over the last 100 years that deaths occur definitely by stress-related disease. So stressors have changed. The definition here is Sapolsky's stressor is anything outside world that knocks you out of homeostatic behaviors, and the stress response is what your body does to reestablish homeostasis, right? Stress now isn't just sitting in your front yard and being attacked by a bobcat or being trampled by that's not what happens anymore. Social status, sociological of makeup of who we are, diving into genetics. Why, like Dr. Sapolsky will say, why do some people have a predilection to eat Oreo cookies and pizza and ice cream when they just feel really lousy, and they do that over a period of time, right? There's all these factors that go into what a stressor is for human beings now. And so it's become such a complicated subject that it's a never-ending kind of battle for research and figuring out what's going on. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so what makes us as humans? What is our stress response unique than other animals? And so, why are we so different than the other animals in the animal kingdom? We can go to the next slide. One big thing is future events. We can activate our stress response system by our thinking. I challenge anybody to sit there in their bed at nighttime and calmly sleeping, and your heart rate's at a good pace, right? You're in homeostatic functioning. You're relaxed. Things are going well. But then imagine, what happens if your heart stops? You start to imagine that. Well, I would be hard pressed to believe that your heart wouldn't start racing, that you wouldn't start experiencing a stressful response while sitting in your own bed, relaxed. And that shows the power of our brain, its ability to just flip on the stress response system automatically, just by thinking about something stressful happening, right? That comes with our imagination. Thinking about unrealistic events, a lot of the clients that I have when it comes to anxiety, it's probably not the most helpful thing always for me to tell them that what they're thinking is not true, and that obviously you're not going to wake up in front of the class naked the next day, so you don't need to worry about that. In their mind, it's real, and it's very real, and so their stress response system is on. And so my job as a therapist is to help comfort them, to help bring that stress response system down, and give them the tools that they need to do it on their own, because we can't always be there for them as their therapist or their clinicians or their moms or dads or brothers and sisters. Also another one, prolonged exposure. We know that prolonged exposure to a stress, right? This is something we as humans go through every day. Work, driving. You think about how much stress you as athletes go through. The leading up to the events, the practicing. This is not something that's just like, well, I'm done. I did the event, right? You might have multiple events in a day. You might be nervous leading up to an event. So this real prolonged kind of exposure to stress really can affect the body, can really affect the mental state. And so we also kind of have to talk about it in a blunt form too, because, this is health we're talking about. And unfortunately, it's not fun to talk about. And no people who ever deliver these messages or know that they're doing it with this goodwill in mind, that they're more educating the greater population, but it's just not always fun to talk about. But remember, primates, our ancestors, they like to torment each other too. So they're an exception to this. And it seems like they're always an exception to this because we're so closely linked to them. So what structure in the body is linked to stress, right? What is that in us that's linked to it? What is actually coming out of? We can go ahead and switch to the next slide. All right, central nervous system, right? It's pretty cool. So wears two hats, obviously, as this hippo's wearing one hat, but I couldn't find a picture with a hippo with two hats. So we have a voluntary nervous system, right? This peripheral nervous system associated with like voluntary control of our body movements, called our muscles, right? The things that we can kind of do on our own. I could take a pin out here and poke my hand and go, ow, it hurts, right? Like kind of purposefully kind of testing that nervous system. And then we have an involuntary nervous system, this autonomic nervous system. And this is comprised of two halves, obviously, sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. And I've got a picture that'll depict that. The autonomic nervous system's job is control the body's unconsciously directed functions, such as breathing, the heartbeat, digestive process. If we as humans were, if we were designed to be able to control that breathing, heartbeat, digest, that'd be kind of cool. But it seems like, how the heck would it, I can barely even walk and chew gum at the same time, let alone try to control all that. So it's built in us. We just do it. It does it for us. Stress plays a big part into what happens when it messes with the autonomic nervous system, and how the autonomic nervous system naturally kicks in and does its thing when we experience a stress response. It's a really cool part of our body, but it's also a very sensitive part of who we are. And anything that disrupts that homeostatic functioning can really throw us for a loop or throw us off. I can go to the next slide. All right, here it is. So we got this thing, this central nervous system, two halves, but in the autonomic nervous system, we've got that even split into two different things, right? We've got this parasympathetic nervous system and this sympathetic nervous system, right? And so when we're like right now, I'm giving this presentation, and as relaxed as I am, there's still a little bit of nerves going in, right? I'm still nervous. I don't know how it's coming across the screen. Maybe I think I'm talking too fast. Maybe I think I'm not, right? This can really invoke the sympathetic nervous system. It can do what? My pupils dilate, gets real big, making sure I see exactly what I'm reading some of my notes here, right? Try to take everything in. The heartbeat might be a little like faster, right? So trying to slow down the pacing of the conversation a little more, since it's so easy to blow through this stuff, right? So airways, so I might be breathing a little heavier, sweating because I'm nervous. The liver, obviously, my body's producing, getting that glucose to where it needs to go, so I can get through this thing, because it's not always easy speaking in front of people. Not even on Zoom, it can be nerve-wracking, right? My digestive system, it's probably not even doing its thing right now because my body's not so worried about digesting lunch. It's worried about conveying this message to you all. Obviously, some of my organs don't need to function a specific way. I don't necessarily have to go to the bathroom right now. My body's not worried about that. And I bet we all experience that stuff. And that's the sympathetic nervous system. When a stressful event hits, these things change. Our body naturally adapts to that stressor just instantly. And these things happen. We don't have to ask it to do it. It just does it. You hear numerous accounts of people might say, well, this thing happened and life slowed down. Well, I don't know if life is slowing down per se, is you are becoming keenly aware of your surroundings, and that's for thanks to the sympathetic nervous system. Now, on the other side of things, we've got this thing called the parasympathetic nervous system, right? That's when we're kind of at this resting state. Like if you just ate lunch and you don't have to do this presentation, you just have to sit here and listen to me drone on about these topics that, we probably covered in biology and if you've heard before, right? You don't really have to, you don't have to take in much light through your eyes. So those pupils can constrict. You don't really need your heart to be working that fast, so it can pump a lot slower, right? It doesn't need to like get glucose to the body super fast. Your breathing is probably paced at a normal level, and so you don't take as much air. Liver's probably doing its thing, right? Blood vessels are constricted because you don't need to pump a bunch of blood everywhere instantaneously. You're probably digesting your food. I'm probably not. Right. And you can get up and go to the bathroom. Your body's like, yeah, you're relaxed. Go for it. Go to the bathroom. Mine's not doing that right now. Right. It's doing something different. And so these two systems, I mean, they can turn off and on and off and on at various points of the day. And so this is just such a brief overview of how awesome our body is and how complicated and nerve-wracking it can be sometimes. We can go to the next slide. All right, brief overview of this. I would say if you want to know more about this, research Dr. Sapolsky, find any references he has to any neurobiologists that go over this. This is not something I've researched enough, but kind of how it worked and what I found was, the amygdala plays a big part of the stress response system. So we sense a stressor, the amygdala senses it, right? And then it sends this distress signal to the hypothalamus, and which is obviously located kind of in the center of the brain. And then the hypothalamus then will communicate to the rest of the body through the cerebral cortex that there's a stressor going on. I just kind of wanted to briefly put this on here to make sure we had something. But Lord knows I'm not a neurobiologist, and though I wish I was, I won't do it justice. I can always too, Trent, since I do so much research almost as a hobby or outside of here, if you ever have anybody that needs any other information, feel free to email me and I'll get that to you. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. For sure.
Okay, yeah, just because it is such a complicated, like the brain is so complicated, and this is changing every day of how they know the brain functions during stressful situations. It seems like there are nuances that change all the time. Okay, and so we know the amygdala has something also to do with PTSD when we experience a really traumatic event. So we can go ahead and flip through this. I just wanted to add this. Okay, cool. So when we do get stressed, there's a bunch of stress hormones that release, but we're not going to go through all of them because we don't have the time. And once again, I'm not a neurobiologist, but the two main ones, right? We've got this epinephrine, this adrenaline, right? Stressor kicks in. We'll say, I'll use an example. I was running once down a path, and this dog was on a leash, but long enough, it jumped out and it caught me on the back of the leg and it bit my leg. Automatically, that epinephrine, that adrenaline hormone's kicking in, right? And so it kicks in, and automatically it's doing its thing. It's my heart rate's increasing, right? It's getting glucose to the bloodstream. It's my muscles are working in conjunction with all this. So it's got all this energy into it, right? My blood pressure's going. I'm metabolizing sugar the right way because it's scary. And it was like a brief stressor. It took probably no more than a couple of seconds. Dog bites. I get the dog off me, right? And I'm kind of like shocked for a second. It's not prolonged. It's very fast. But if it did kind of go on a little bit longer, right? Get this thing called cortisol that kicks in, right? It's after that initial or neuroepinephrine or the epinephrine is released. This cortisol hormone hormone kicks in, and it keeps kind of the same thing going. Helps us to sustain a heart rate, muscle strength, getting the glucose to where it needs to go, metabolizing what we need to metabolize, restricting the things that we need to restrict. in our body. And it is, cortisol is under a group of family of hormones called glucocorticoids. And so that is another whole realm of study that Sapolsky is mainly interested in. And if you want to know all about glucocorticoids, hormones, he's got you covered until the cows come home or the zebras come home or any animal you want. But that is his specialty, because too much of this stuff is not a good thing. It's actually a bad thing for us. We can go ahead and go on to the next slide. So different types of stressors, right? So it's not just like it's not just, there's the big S, right, which is like stress, but then there's subsections of this. And so what we're kind of designed for as humans actually is more acute stress, more stuff that happens immediately, just like the dog bite, right? Dog bites, oh my gosh, that's awful, this is scary, I don't really know what to do right now, I'm panicking, but then it's over, right? Like they said, barely avoiding a car accident, right? Being chased by an animal. These are situations, these acute stressors. Someone falls off a bike, oh no, right? They happen quickly. Now there's chronic stress, long-term stress, stress that happens when you experience, like I said, ongoing situations that cause frustration, anxiety, anger, irritability, this prolonged stuff, a job you don't like. I'm not saying that you don't like all your relatives, but being around a relative for too long, all this stuff can really cause a lot of prolonged chronic stress over time, that in the moment, it just is experienced as stress, but too long, and it begins to make us sick. And that's what we're facing with, especially in America today, are stress-related illnesses, heart disease. We know, I don't think cancer is related to stress. I could be wrong. That could have changed by the last time I looked at that. You know, diabetes, not so much, it can be based on stress, but if someone's eating Oreo cookies to make themselves feel better over a prolonged period of time, they can get diabetes. Someone might smoke, someone might drink because they're stressed. So there's all of these kind of cascading effects when we're like always exposed to chronic stress. Then there's traumatic stress, right? This is what happened when something explicitly bad happens. And they give examples here: tornado, what, like really catastrophic weather events, war, sexual assault, things like that. It doesn't have to just be limited to these things. And we do know actually PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, is not the hardest thing to give someone. If it's a stressful event, it's going to stick with them. And what Dr. Sapolsky uses is sometimes is just even having something out of the ordinary that feels weird and different can cause this kind of intense, stressful situation. His example is like, if he says Miley Cyrus, I'll say Billie Eilish. About Billie Eilish, if you got news that she was joining the Supreme Court tomorrow, that's really different, and that might be stressful to some people, and you remember that. But I think we all know people who have been through something very stressful that it changes them. And part of the work that I do is to help people with PTSD and these other chronic these other stressors as well. We can go to the next slide. All right. So affects a physiological and psychological stress. And that's the biggest thing, is that the psychological stress is what we're finding is really affecting people today more so than ever. This battering of psychological stress, hitting that against constant 24 hours access to social media, access to news, political climate, economy, socioeconomic, like poverty. I mean, all this stuff is just constant, right? Now, if we look at it from a physiological perspective, right? Short-term stress, you get instant energy production, You get the glucose where it needs to go, heart rate increases, right? Improved vision and hearing, because I mean, you want to stay safe. Digestion halts. I say immune system goes fishing. That doesn't actually happen in all cases. So if your stress response is activated to like break down a bacteria or something, like then your immune system is actually going to increase for a time being. Now, if you're being chased by something, maybe you don't need your immune system, and right then and there, and the body just shuts that down for a little bit. Pain threshold increases. I don't know if anyone's ever accidentally cut themselves and saw the cut on their finger, and maybe they were in the panic of getting cut. They didn't feel the pain right then, but once they calmed down, that pain set in. And that's our stress response system at work immediately, allowing us to adapt to the situation, to be able to get through it. And then once we get to a more homeostatic functioning state, oh my God, this really hurts, right? I probably might need to see a doctor or get a very big Band-Aid. Prolonged stress effects, right? So these psychological stresses can lead to high blood pressure, prolonged bouts of anxiety, severe depression, right? PTSD it's almost like you could take something that's chronic and maximize it over time, and that might even turn it to like a post-traumatic stress syndrome type thing. It's not labeled in the DSM that way, but I'd be hard pressed to say that the symptoms are fairly the same. Hormone changes, right? Various sicknesses, things like that. This is what happens when psychological stress just gets battered over and over and over again. And I'm sorry I don't have all the most wonderful news right now to present from this, but I think the education on this is important because there are things that we can do about this. We can go to the next slide. All right, so let the healing begin. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. All right, so what do we do, right? So there's like a bunch of things we can do. The biggest predilection is genes play a big part in this. Some people can actually handle stress better than others, and I wish that weren't the case. I wish we could all have a level playing field with this, but we do know that there are some people who are just better at handling stress. Now, we can take some things from them, like what are they doing while they're handling stress? Well, right, I think the Wellness Wednesdays talked about mindfulness once. That's not on here, but it is one thing that you can do, right? These mindfulness meditative practices to help with stressors, to help center ourselves, to quiet our bodies and our minds, to learn to slow things down when we're experiencing stress so we don't succumb to the stress as harshly. One thing I will propose, exercise. Exercise is a great way to reduce stress in any way, shape, or form, whatever works for you. Walking, hiking, swimming, make it fun for you. It could be anywhere from archery to jujitsu to hiking to underwater basket weaving. It doesn't matter, as long as you're enjoying it and you're doing it consistently. It's fantastic, right? You make it a routine. It can't just be like once today, take 5 days off, do it the next day. It's got to be, we know it has to be routine. We have to sustain it, right? Proper nutrition as well. Proper diet, as corny as it sounds, and as much as I think we as therapists, clinicians, we'll just constantly harp on this. Food and what we put into our body is so impactful. But not everyone has access to those good foods, right? Not everyone has access to a grocery store, to produce, to fruit, to enriched nutrient foods, to vitamins, and so we have to be very conscious. That's not always possible for all people. And so we can work to do a better job of that. But if you do have access to it, take advantage of it. Social supports, right? So we know why therapy works. One is just interacting with people. People come in here, they don't feel well. There are a lot of people I see that don't have anybody in their lives, and they come see me because it gives them that social interaction, and the therapeutic work boosts their self-esteem. It actually, we know it can boost their immune system. It can boost their It can reduce depression and anxiety just through that social interaction. So connecting with friends as much as possible, with loved ones, with acquaintances, doing exactly what we're doing right now, hopping on a Zoom call with people that are in a community that are conversing about something. This also can help reduce our stress. Attend church groups, social events, any spiritual gathering, hobby groups. We know this stuff works. Reach out to your physicians, to therapists like myself, and any other professionals that give you a support system. It doesn't matter who you're reaching out to. If you're reaching out, you're already doing the work of reducing your stress response. And one thing Dr. Sapolsky talks about is try something new. If none of this stuff is working, it's actually a benefit if you're like, well, I'm just gonna, maybe I'll stand on my head. Talk to your doctor first, but if standing on your head is going to help reduce stress, stand on your head. It's better than not doing anything, and we know that. And once again, it sounds doom and gloom, but we can combat the effects of stress by helping each other. That creating a space in which people can tell somebody, I'm really stressed out and here's why. Not making so much of a taboo, or not building it into our everyday existence that we're just stressed because we're Americans and we work a lot, we've got a lot to do. We can do things a little bit better. And that's really what I'm promoting with this, is what can we do better for each other as a community? And we can go to the next slide, actually. So in summary, okay, which I want to end with this picture, our stress response system is a complex biological component that warns us of immediate dangers and protects the body by redirecting bodily functions. Prolonged stress can cause irreparable damage to our physical and mental health, but humans can reduce the effects of stress through exercise, social, and numerous capabilities. If you think you're experiencing stress, please reach out to your doctor, therapist, or a safe relationship or a loved one. There should have been a comma there, but I didn't miss that as a typo. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. You can actually find a lot of this stuff that I talked about in Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It's pretty cheap now. It's like in its 3rd or 4th printing, so you can get it on Amazon for like nothing. It's dense, but I think it's totally worth it. It's a fun read. Yeah, that's what I got today, Trent. This is just the works cited stuff. This just says I didn't make this all up. And
Sure. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was great. That was super informative. I have a little bit of a psychology background, so always find any talks like this super.
And I'm skimming the surface. Like, I feel like half the time, like, I still don't know nearly enough. I just kind of keep watching Dr. Sapolsky's work, and hopefully some of that will sink in, because when I begin to at least instruct people how the stress response system works when they're coming in, they feel so like it's them, like it's their fault or it's their problem. And it's like, yes, because you have a body, right? And that's why it feels that way. But no, because our system is built in a way that's invoking a lot of stress in our lives now. Yeah. And long work hours, bad diets, these things are really built into us now. Prolonged exposure to social media. I've got clients that spend over 8 hours a day on social media scrolling, right? And trying to break that cycle, because it creates eating problems, body dysmorphia, all this stuff. And so trying to help people to realize that actually, no, it's really not your fault. You didn't design your body, right? You actually didn't design your brain either. Was it shaped by experience? Yes. Is it still shaped? Yes. But we can change that now and educate you on how this works so you can feel better. And so I think that's the main reason why I dived into this work.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, just a super powerful message. And I think something that's great for all people, and especially all the Special Olympic athletes,
Yeah.
giving power back, and
Mhm.
realizing that you can break some of these cycles, and
Yeah.
even though it is, when things do come from our body and it does feel, I guess, natural, but it might not be something that is actually natural if it's a response coming from social media or
Yeah. 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 And we
it.
can change things as a community, right? If we have a different message and learn to comfort each other. We are a human species, or there's symbiosis here. We can help comfort just not each other, but communities in countries, right? It can expand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if that's it, anybody can, Kelly has my email and you have my email. If any athletes ever just want to reach out for just resources or just to like, hey, I'm experiencing this, can you point, always willing to do that at any time.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. I know.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah, I know Kelly has everyone's emails as well, and this will be sent out, so I'm sure a lot of people will be watching it on demand.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, wonderful.
Thank you so much. All right.
All right. Well, I will see you all soon, hopefully. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We'd
Thank
love
you.
to have
Take
you
care,
on
guys.
again.
Thank you so much.
All
I'll
right.
say hi to Kelly. I know she's not talking. She's not feeling well, but I'll say hi. All right. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you all. You're very welcome.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.